Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's session of the Police and Crime Panel. Please note that the proceedings at this meeting are being recorded and live streamed. Before we proceed, I would like to bring some housekeeping to your attention. As usual, if you wish to speak during the meeting, I would ask that you raise your hands and wait for an invitation to speak. There are no expected fire alarms today, but if it does sound, please can everybody leave the chamber and exit down the stairs through the main entrance before gathering in the car park in front of the building. Can I also welcome the University of Plymouth here today to our session. They are currently studying professional policing and criminology, I believe, so I hope you'll find the sessions today informative, so you're very welcome. That said, our first item is apologies. So Ross, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Toms and Councillor Worth is substituting, Councillor Goodman Bradbury, Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Roger and Councillor Loudon.
Thank you. Moving on to our next item, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. If we run through them page by page, starting with page 1. Page 2. Page 3. 4. 5. 6. 7. 8. Yes, Roger.
I'm sure, so page 8, little j, I'm sure Glenn Mayhew would be quite happy to accept a promotion, but the last time I met him, he was a chief super. He may be in ACC now, but he's certainly not the chief constable.
Thank you, Roger. That'll be noted. Thank you. And amended. Anything else on page 8? And page 9. Thank you. I propose that those are true and accurate record with that amendment noted. So I propose from the chair. Councillor, are you seconding? Yes. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So it's been proposed, seconded. All in favour? Okay, I think that's unanimous. Yep, thank you. Moving on to item 3, declarations of interests. Are there any to declare at this point? Okay, we'll take them as and when they arrive, if any do. Thank you. Moving on to public question time. I think we have 4 questions submitted from the public today. I have one starting with one from Samuel.
Yeah, hello. First question being, in light of crime data in rural areas, how are the panel checking the efficacy of community policing strategies to address specific challenges unique to those regions? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll ask Ross to read out the response from the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The panel undertakes a regular review of the Police and Crime Plan and receives regular reports from the Commissioner through her update report. At the last Police and Crime panel, councillors agreed to add rural crime to the work programme after discussions concerning the update report, and will be discussed further at a future meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ross. I believe you have submitted another question.
Indeed. Considering the alarming national data on public trust in law enforcement released by the Lords Library Parliament of April 2023, can the panel elaborate on initiatives aimed at improving community relations and how the effectiveness of the police and the OPCC in this area will be measured and monitored? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ross.
Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly Police continues to have operational independence from the Commissioner and the panel. Whilst operational initiatives can improve community relations, this would be a matter for the police. The panel received a report on the involvement of the Independent Office for Police Conduct and Police Legitimacy on the 25th of November 22 to understand what was happening nationally, regionally and locally to restore public confidence in policing. The panel receives a scorecard at every meeting, which advises the panel of key performance measures. The panel also considers the Commissioner's annual report, which provides a review of the previous 12 months and the performance against the Commissioner's Police and Crime Plan. The panel will also discuss an item on public engagement at today's meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ross. Now moving on to Chloe. I believe you also have two questions.
Chloe was unavailable to be here today, so I'm Poppy. I'm just going to ask her questions for her.
Okay, thank you very much, Poppy.
That's okay. So firstly, how achievable does the panel believe that the 2021 to 2025 crime plan is within the current budget?
In reviewing the budget requirement for the Commissioner's Police and Crime Plan, the panel remain aware of the difficult financial environment facing all public sector services. The panel reviews funding for the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner at its precept meetings, which occur annually. At the last precept meeting, which took place on the 27th of January 2023, the panel agreed to accept the Commissioner's council tax precept proposals following a review of the budget and the medium-term financial strategy. Further consideration of the budget will take place at a future meeting of the panel.
Thank you, Ross. Poppy, would you like to ask the second question?
Yeah. In relation to demographic data, how does the panel ensure that the police and OPCC are engaging young people and involving them in crime prevention and community safety initiatives, acknowledging that obviously our presence here is a step in the right direction?
Thank you, Chair. The Devon, Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Police and Crime Panel have responsibility for scrutinising the work of the Commissioner. Whilst the panel has discussed issues which have an impact on young people, such as child sexual exploitation and county lines drugs networks, the panel has not specifically requested information concerning the engagement of young people in initiatives led by the Commissioner or by Devon and Cornwall Police. The panel acknowledges this limited scrutiny and would like to thank you for your question and will consider the addition of this issue to its work programme for future discussion in which we could hear updates from the Commissioner. We welcome you today, and members of the public are able to attend any meetings of the panel and able to access live streams via the City Council's YouTube page. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ross. And thank you for your questions. Moving on to item 5, our action log. Are there any questions regarding this item? Yes.
I've read the Police Crime Commissioner's response that was sent up re the fire consultations, but I was disappointed not to see the issue about temporary licences, as we discussed here, and that we voted unanimously on, that we did not want to see any more temporary licences issued. And we as a committee feel that. I have read it and I can't see it within that report.
Thank you, Councillor. Could we make a note of that for the record for investigation. Thank you. Any other points? Yes, please, Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. It's probably worth just highlighting to you for a little bit of reassurance, because obviously I closely monitor what's happening in the Firearms Licensing Department. The issuing of temporary licences has dramatically reduced. The latest performance information I've seen is we're talking about issuing about 4 a month, which it was way beyond that. Still got some that we need to resolve that have already been issued as temporary licences, which they're working through, but they've stopped the proactive use of temporary licences in the department and reduced it dramatically. They are not using that as a lean on because of time frame challenges now. So I've been reassured in the latest report that I have seen that they have dramatically reduced the issuing of them when somebody comes in for a renewal.
Thank you. Councillor.
I'd like to thank you for that reassurance. I know we were much higher than other forces within the country, but is it an issue that we should be concerned about countrywide? You know, delighted that we've reduced hours, but countrywide, is it an issue or not? I know that it was made, it's not really, it's just us.
Chairman, if I may, it's good practice to not issue temporary licences as a reason because you've got too many coming in at once and you haven't got time to properly process them. It's been used as a temporary stopgap and it's not seen as good practice to do that, but you are allowed to do that. And some forces will increase their temporary licences when they have an influx of renewals because it's on a 5-year period. So you may have a lull for a few years and then you have lots of people reapplying. So temporary licences gets used in different ways in different forces during different years. So you are allowed to use them. It's just not seen as good practice to lean on them. And Devon and Cornwall Police definitely were leaning on them. And they've made such huge strides forward now to not be moving in. That's the natural process. It was sort of the natural process to issue a temporary. That's not the case now.
Thank you. Councillor, do you want to come back once more?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you for the rest of the report. I personally felt it was a good report. It reflected the views that you'd heard at the panel meeting and strengthened some others that you mentioned, you know, particularly around the 5 years, how they should be seen to pay for themselves rather than, you know, people who pay their police precept paying for them. So I'm absolutely delighted by the rest of the report. I was just a bit concerned, but thank you for that reassurance.
Thank you again, Commissioner, for that reassurance. The panel was concerned regarding that item, so thank you. Any other points? Yes, okay. I'll propose that for noting. Do I have a seconder? Vice Chair, thank you. All in favour? Thank you. Right, moving on to the substantial items of the agenda now, which is starting with public engagement. Item 6, pages 15 to 24. So I'll hand over to the Commissioner for the report. So thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm pleased to bring positivity in relation to this report. Still some room for improvement, but there's been a lot of effort that's been made in the last 6 months, but particularly in the last 3 months, and this is continuing. We've had some warm words from Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary about the level of progress that's happened in contact, but we won't know the outcome of that till they do a re-inspection. But it may. We're hoping we are definitely on the right track. There's a few things that have happened that we can't seem to ever resolve, which is a particularly lengthy wait on 101 to get the phone answered, a particularly high abandonment call rate when people give up, and the mitigations that we put in place to resolve that. And one of them was particularly prompted by the panel, which is the callback service. so that people can be called back when the operator has a moment to give them a call. And that's been working really well since they introduced that, and it's reduced the abandonment rate. We can't say it's a direct correlation, but it's certainly making an improvement already, and people are taking up that service of callback function. The other thing that's quite key, I think, in terms of the triage that we introduce, which is so people get to speak to a human being quickly, and then they're pointed to the right direction afterwards. But it helps those who are really distressed to be able to speak to a human being quickly. That's been put in place. Obviously, we've reopened a number of police inquiry offices, so people have also another option to contact and access the police. The web chat's been developed since we all first started this conversation many years ago. So there's been a lot of progress of mitigations to try and cope with the level of phone calls that's been coming through 101. And I have to say the 999 calls have dramatically increased. We keep going up and down the league table, but we're talking about seconds, literally, on that league table. It's a matter of seconds difference in performance, not minutes or hours. So the 999 has been a real success in terms of being able to answer those calls much quicker. In fact, there's 90% of 999 calls are answered within 10 seconds, and we average around 7 seconds. So it's pretty good performance that's happened there. I think the other area in terms of just highlighting it is this has been an absolutely relentless challenge for Devon and Cornwall Police, and I want to thank Assistant Chief Constable Nikki Leaper, who only last weekend spent the entire evenings walking the floor in the contact centre. There's a lot of intrusive supervision about performance in that area, and we've managed to retain staff for longer as well, so we had quite a high staff turnover in the contact centre, and I think that leadership has really helped in terms of driving forward the improvements. So I think the biggest thing will be when Her Majesty's Inspectorate come back in and inspect and say whether or not they think that they've improved. If you remember, this is one of the areas that has put the force in to engage closer monitoring with Her Majesty's Inspectorate. It is around February next year where we may get some news about where we're at with that, but I'm feeling very confident, and there's an actual drive to get the abandonment rate down to about 25%, which is dramatically different to what it was only a year ago. And it's down to about, what was it, about 36%, I think, the last time I looked. And there's an absolute drive to get that down to 25 or 24%. So I actually come with some positivity about public contact today. I think I'm normally embarrassed to come with you with a report about the performance. I'm usually frustrated by the level of IT investment that's slow. That AACC 7, if any of you remember it, has taken about 3 years to get implemented, and I believe we were the first force alongside Thames Valley to actually get that into the contact centre. Lots of integration difficulties, lots of challenges, but I have to say I'm really pleased with the efforts that Devon and Cornwall Police have made to focus on this, and I'm open to questions, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. So we're open to questions. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Good drops. I mean, the figures are good, you're right. I mean, my question to you, if we were, as a panel, asking you for a KPI indication of how long somebody ought to be waiting on 101, could you give us a figure? Because clearly, you know, we're not talking 999 where 7 seconds is great. We are talking 101. We've got the triage. It's triaged as non-urgent, but obviously 47 minutes is probably still too long. So what's the right amount of time?
I can give you a few different answers to that. When we did a public survey on this about 6 years ago, if you know, we've been trying to improve this area for quite some time. The public think 2 minutes. I think that is actually unrealistic and unachievable. We used to aim for 10 minutes. And then demand, so 999 calls have dramatic, about 25% increase in 999 calls has happened, and more has come in through 101. So actually demand keeps going, and it's not making that time frame lower. We then did a piece of scrutiny on the forces control room, and we recommended 20 minutes from my office. And if you remember, the Chief Constable did his reply to it, and we shared this with you probably about, I'm going to say about a year ago, and you were really disappointed because the Chief Constable said, I can't commit to 20 minutes because I don't think they could see a way out. I think they've now got a plan and a way out. And I'm not saying 20 minutes is right, but they are still trying their best to get down to around 20 minutes. I think the biggest thing for us is reduce the abandonment rate so we know people are not giving up. I think that is a real key focus, and Her Majesty's Inspectorate are focused on the abandonment rate, mainly because the force couldn't explain why people were abandoning the calls. I think narrowing it down so few now, we know that they're hanging on and we know that they're waiting. So I suppose the bit for us to say is the lower the abandonment rate, the more acceptable people are probably finding the length of time waiting. But 20 minutes is the last performance measure I gave to the Chief Constable a while ago, and that's the aim at the moment still.
Thank you. Do you wish to come back?
Yeah, very briefly. Thank you, Chair. I agree with you. I mean, the reality is if you phone a utility company, you're likely to wait 20 minutes. I don't think 20 minutes is unreasonable, but I think it would be really good for the Chief Constable to have that clear in his mind. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your report, Alison. It's actually on very much the same question. I just want to clarify, is 20 minutes now the target? And when can we expect to see that happen?
Thanks, Chair. At the moment, the main focus and target has been to answer the 999 calls 10 seconds, 90% within 10 seconds. And the other main target has been to reduce the abandonment rate. So that's what's the focus at the moment. I won't set or formally set with the Chief Constable the 20 minutes until we've managed to balance this out. There's so much activity going on at the moment. The callbacks have only been running for about 6 weeks, couple of months. So we've got to get that into a routine operation of working properly. Once we've seen it all settle, I've got the front desks open. Some more are opening in January, February next year. We now then need to consolidate and see where we're at. So there's a few different levers that are affecting this, because if I tried to focus the Chief Constable right now on a 20-minute of answering 101, I suspect the 999s will get affected. I just want some stabilisation of all the activity that they've done. And also, I am not willing to invest any more money into public contact. Panel has supported me over the years. I've invested a fair few million, and I can't throw any more money at it. They've increased staffing, we've invested in technology. If I said you've got to absolutely make 20 minutes, I think they'll be distracted from the other things they're doing, and they probably ask for more money. And I don't think at this point in time, panel would support me for even more investment in that area.
Thank you. Councillor Lever.
Thank you for that, and I understand the complexities of this, of course. I mean, given the autumn statement that we had earlier this week and the failure of any mention of public services, I think we are all of us expecting further cuts in the services that we provide, both from councils and across the public sector. That's extremely worrying for our communities. Are you lobbying the government to actually provide more funding for areas such as public service, particularly around this issue?
Thank you, Chairman. There's a few aspects there. So every year, we as a collective of police and crime commissioners lobby the Treasury and the Home Office around what we believe we need to actually sustain ourselves going forward. That happens on an annual basis, and we provide evidence of levels of demand, we provide evidence of cost increases and a range of other things. So that happens on an annual basis. But obviously, as you know, panel, you've supported me in lobbying around the funding formula for policing. We still don't have a decision on that. I haven't seen the full consultation on that still come out. So I'm going to probably say it's not going to happen this year. But that has been our main core focus of when that changes. And I think it might be a matter of when rather than if, in terms of how we get more funding for places like us with our summer challenges, our rural challenges, and our coastal challenges. So there's two aspects there. There's the annual push that we do, and then there's the long-term trying to change how we are fundamentally funded.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Whilst I accept that it's probably impossible to go further than you're suggesting at the moment in the short term, I really wouldn't like to lose the idea that we need to make continued progress year on year in this area. And I think a lot of it comes down to the importance that's put on it. It's very noticeable that you've got, as has been mentioned, utility firms that tend to be very slow in answering, but it's incredibly noticeable how financial institutes, particularly the smaller ones, building societies, have got so much better at this because they're working in competition with each other all the time, and they therefore feel it's important. If you take, I think, a prime example, Coventry Building Society puts on its website every day its response time. Now, I don't quite know how they measure it, but they're claiming to receive answer calls within 8 seconds for mortgage inquiries. That's the figure for yesterday. That's what's on the website. And I do think a lot of it is how important it is that makes the motivation to get this right. So I wouldn't like to lose longer term that we need to continue to drive it down year by year.
Thank you, Chairman. The reality is we do have triage. I've just found it in the report just to check that the aim is to answer it within 30 seconds. So I go back to, we do try to identify those individuals that need more help urgently and those that may need it less urgently, but they are tried to answer within 30 seconds. So we do that. You don't hang on a phone line for 45 minutes or 30 minutes or 20 minutes. You are spoken to by a human being. And I think the bit for us in particular, you know, comparing us to utility companies, I'd like to see your local authority answering times on your calls and how you manage to do it. It is a big challenge in the public sector. Money, the profit margins that companies, mortgage, particularly because the mortgage rates are going up, they all want to compete. I will promise you this, that forces compete with each other. Her Majesty's Inspectorate, in fact, I've just heard the news today that West Midlands are going into engage mode with HMIC, and I wouldn't be surprised if Contact was one of them. So we are being driven through the body that inspects policing, as well as what the Police and Crime Commissioner may ask of the Chief Constable in that area. So it will always be a focus because it is inspected.
Okay. Councillor Hewing.
Thank you, Chair. The report doesn't really show what the level of footfall has been into the front inquiry offices that have been opened, as there doesn't appear to be any information regarding this in the report. Have we thought about using community safety partnerships who use social media and communications, that these offices are now available to members of the public to try and increase engagement and clearly drop the phone levels?
Thank you, Chairman. We should be having the footfall measure as one of our indicators on the plan. I think we had that conversation at the last meeting. There's been a few challenges around getting that data, so that will be there, because don't forget, I'm not judging them on footfall. I've said this, that was the reason they closed. I'm judging them on quality of service to those members of the public. But I've just been informed that we've got a weekly activity number of about 1,500 to 1,700 across all of the police inquiry offices. So that's people going in and asking for help. I do think, though, in terms of the community safety partnerships, I'm really keen to get a leaflet out from the police in the communities that surround those police inquiry offices to let them know it's open, what the opening times are. So that is something I'd really like to see, to educate the public that it's there for them. So I think that's probably the best way I could get the message out, and really happy for community safety partnerships to help share that too. We want to see them used, and I'm really particularly excited about Devonport that we soft launched. It's only open 3 days a week at the moment. It's one of the nicest front desks that I've been into. It's never had a front desk in that police station, and the whole team are really excited about being able to help that community that has never had one on its doorstep. So there's some really good things that are happening, but footfall will be properly brought into the performance measures in future meetings.
May I make a suggestion? To keep the costs down, why don't you ask for an A5 leaflet to go out with the council tax letters? No, it doesn't. If you work out what you're going to put in, it keeps the cost down of the envelope. They just work out which bits of paper go in and don't. And this is hugely important. And for those areas and councils that do have, you know, a police station that is open, be it old or new, the public need reminding that they are there. And I would really hope that younger people start to feel that they could go in and speak to somebody. They're on their doorstep, they're local officers that they've probably seen walking the streets or whatever. And I think it's really important that we can build up that relationship and help it with younger people.
Chairman, if I may, I'm delighted you support the council tax leaflet, because we've worked really hard to try and get one out every year through the bills in Devon and Cornwall. And we will continue to do that as part of the accountability for the public spend that we have on their council tax. I'm acutely aware that it's high, and I've increased it every year, and it's really important that they understand what I'm spending it on so that they can feel either reassured or hold me to account. I think in terms of, so that will be happening in February, March, when the bills go out. We will be getting them into the areas. The issue around young people, I appreciate that entirely, and I'm really delighted that as I've gone around and met some of the staff who are public inquiry officers in our front desks, many of them are younger than me, younger than you, people who are actually there doing that job. So I'm quite excited. They've got customer service is their focus. Some of them have actually come from the control room who have answered the 101 and 999 calls, so they come with experience as well. But there's a lot of people who seem to be of the younger cohort, whether it's because it's a part-time job and it's brought in a different range of people, but I've been really pleased to meet them, and they've been a lot younger than me and you. No offence, panel member.
Thank you, Councillor. That's a very good idea. I know that any additional information, though, is at the discretion of the primary authority that issues the council tax letters, because I know that Newquay Town Council, as an example, in the past have wanted to send out additional information and have been told we can't. So yeah, it's a question for the primary authority. Councillor Penberthy.
Thank you, Chair. Just one quick point, Commissioner. A point of habit, I'm sure, but it's no longer Her Majesty's anything. It's His Majesty's, and every time so far you've said her, not his. Don't worry, I got caught out on that on a paper I presented the other day as well. But I think we all just need continue reminding after a lifetime of a reign. So, I just wanted to pick up on the issues of you talk in your report about a technical IT fault, with meaning that the 999 service is having to have manual intervention that's been going on since September. We're now November. That's almost 3 months. Now, I know 2 to 5 seconds manual intervention doesn't sound much. The volume of calls you're handling makes that big, and you do note that that has an impact on 101 service, because you're having to move people from 101 service to 999 service. Clearly, we need to have good 999 service, and that's what you've been focusing on. That is having a knock-on 101. I know it's not our responsibilities, or your responsibilities when something else goes wrong, but 3 months to fix an IT problem on a 999 number seems really bad. If someone isn't sorting it, and they continue not sorting it, shouldn't you be naming and shaming the reasons, and actually saying we're in a competitive market, this is a public service? If someone's letting you down to that degree, shouldn't you be naming and shaming? But how are you also making sure that that gets fixed? Because 3 months of not fixing an IT fault on a 999 line seems to be moving beyond operational to something slightly more strategic.
Councillor Penberthy, do you know what? There's always something, is what I'll say, when trying to fix something in the contact centre. First off, BT are the ones who answer the phone first, and then it's the handover to each force. And there's different time frames in how long that takes to get to each force. But that fix at the moment I've been promised is December. Assistant Chief Constable Nikki Leeper has been working with, I believe it's BT, that is part of the challenge, and it might be part of the issues where we've introduced new software into the control room. But I can promise you this, there is no easy technical fixes around anything in policing. There are so many multiple systems that need to interact with each other, but I have been promised December. We have things like, I'll just add you another little blip that can come around. New mobile phone software update on a particular provider caused lots of random ringings to 999 and caused an influx of 999 calls. You know, if you accidentally press it twice and it immediately on your phone calls, the police have to call back every 999 that abandons it because they go, oh, whoops, I didn't mean to ring 999. And we had thousands of phone calls that we had to call back. These sorts of things happen. That is a localised technical problem, but December is what I've been given as a suggested solution.
If it's not December, can you actually give us more detail next time? Because I think that is something that I think is of public interest, because it is affecting the 101 service particularly.
Thank you. So that will be noted. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this report. And I'm very pleased to see the 999 response go up, and that is very good. Thank you for saying, after my colleague's question, that you will include data of the front desk inquiries, but could I just add to that it would be data of things that would otherwise have been reported through 101, so that we can see if there's a clear correlation of having those front desks open to relieve that pressure on the phone line. That would be really good to see if that's happening. And my question is related to page 23 of the report, saying you welcome representation from the panel to inform the locations of the further 4 PEO sites. Can I make a representation, please, for Exeter City Centre? We're showing on the map as having one, but this is, of course, Middlemore, isn't it? Which is out of the walking, busing, travel possibilities of most people in Exeter. We would really welcome one in Sidwell Street or South Street. I will, of course, follow up that in writing, but I'm making a verbal representation now. Thank you.
Commissioner.
Absolutely, and I'd like anyone who wants to make any representations to me. At the moment, there's only 4 more that can be opened that we've got in the budget. I've got a few in my mind from the previous feasibility that we did, but I'd welcome any representations from an area that believes that would be helpful, and then I can revisit the data and the feasibility on those.
Thank you, Commissioner. And if the panel could just note that as a request as well, then it will be on record. So thank you. Councillor Chopak.
Thank you, Chair. Alison, lovely again. Thank you for your report. Very informative, and it's partly on the front office desk again. I'm a great advocate of them, and I think they're absolutely an amazing resource for you. Again, I wanted to reiterate the request for the data. What I just sort of wanted to know, if you like, nationally, obviously it sounds like we've got 6 front office desks open now. 2 parts of my question, really. Obviously, I come from a very touristy area. So is there an expectation from us in a tourist area to have a higher volume of people walking into a front desk because of the holidaymaker issue? And also, nationally, how do we compare in Devon and Cornwall for front office desks compared to anywhere else? So again, if you came on holiday from Northampton or something, would they expect to see a front office desk, or is actually Devon and Cornwall a bit of a front runner to actually giving that facing resource to the public?
Thank you, Chairman. We're one of the few areas that have opened as many police station front desks as this. In fact, very few areas have reopened front desks when they've closed them. Some areas like Lancashire, he reopened those, Andrew Snowden. We are very few of the areas that have done it. And I think some of the things that makes us prioritise these things is because of our geography, because of our summer challenge and population increase. and the fact that we are still at the moment the lowest crime rate area, we keep it that way by making sure people don't tolerate things going on in their community. So I am really pleased to say that we have prioritised that investment in Devon and Cornwall, and a lot of my colleagues are quite envious because they'd like to do it but can't afford to do it. I'm not saying the budget's not difficult, and I'll be bringing that to you in February panel around some of the challenges to sustain the officer numbers with the grant that we've got from the government. So we will have some challenges going forward, but I'm absolutely determined that a tangible, visible investment in a local community for the level of council tax people are now paying for policing, and we still haven't been able to visibly show people the police officers on the streets because they're still in training, they're still not out there, and that frustration is best to try and show them that there is investment by policing in their communities. So yeah, one of the few.
Thank you. Councillors Hackett and then Tilby. Don't worry, Councillor Crowd, we've got you on the list. So, Councillor Hackett.
Thank you very much, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to go back to a previous item that we spoke about, and that's the email shot, the mail shot we do with the council tax. Many people don't know the most efficient way to contact their local police. Rather than just put a bump for figures that, quite frankly, turns most people off and it goes in the bin, if they have the most preferred and effective way of contacting the police, it might lessen the number of 101 calls, and we would get more emails and texts going to our local police stations and areas. So I think that's an opportunity that perhaps we'd like to consider. Is that feasible?
Chairman, the council tax leaflets that I produce every year, we can definitely labour much larger this year on the opening of the police stations and the online form and the web chat availability. We do normally put that on there, but we can, go a bit larger in relation to that. I do still have some challenges of getting them into some of the council's tax bills. I've had years and years of not being able to get it into Plymouth City Councils, and I've had to pay separately for a leaflet to do that. But I'll make a commitment that I will always get some form of leaflet out around the council tax bill. So there is an opportunity through there.
So we'll see where, in the case of the local town to me is Holsworthy, you can contact the local force in Holsworthy, and the public in the Holsworthy rural area will know that it can email direct, which I think will be... You cannot do that, even though the local police would like that to happen. Why not?
Chairman, unless there's a police inquiry office for them to go and, when it's open, or they've made an appointment with the police officer to go to Holsworthy Station and have an appointment, which they would still have to go through the corporate contact methods in order to do that.
Okay, not email the local team.
No, they used to be on the service, on the website. They used to be email your local neighbourhood policing team. There's been a bit of what we've had is lots of contact dropping out and not being able to see it. So they've been reviewing how they do that. So at the moment, if it lands in a neighbourhood team's inbox and nobody's looking at it for 48 hours and something urgent has landed in there, the police can't afford the risk of that happening. So that's the reality of it. So if they've got a police inquiry office, they do have that option. So again, if you say Holsworthy is a consideration for a police inquiry office, that may be another one to make representations around. But at the moment, you can't really do that unless you make an appointment with a police officer at that police station.
Okay, and the second part is to make sure that we can get the police out to deal with the incidents. Now, I believe we've got a command and control system and another system. The two systems are Storm and Niche, and apparently they don't talk to each other. If you've got a police officer in a local neighbourhood, he can be unaware of something that he could deal with at the same time. So is there a way of making sure that these two systems do talk to each other and the police can access both systems when they're in a neighbourhood?
Chairman, I can give you the best of my knowledge around these systems, but fundamentally, unless that officer is saying I'm available for duty to take calls for an emergency, they will not get told about that incident because they usually are, if they're a neighbourhood officer, they may be deployed doing other duties that they've got planned. So the ones that get told where to go to an incident are those that are on the patrol response teams. But often what will happen is local neighbourhood teams will always be listening to the radio and will often attend personally if they happen to be there and they're not deployed somewhere else doing something. So often we've had PCSOs turn up to 999 incidences, which they actually shouldn't, because that is, in practice, that's not their role. But because they're there, they will often do it out of their own personal want to support the force if it's something that's really urgent and support a member of the public that might be in need, and they'll make an assessment at the time. But what I'm saying is it's the response and the patrol teams that will get deployed to 999 incidences, not neighbourhood teams, unless they are a hybrid like we have in Dartmouth and we have in a few other places of rural where they are both neighbourhood and response. They fulfil both roles. We've got a few of those throughout the force.
Okay, this was raised to me by a warranted officer who said it would be a dramatic improvement to his efficiency if he could access both. So obviously, if a warranted officer on the ground is feeling that and the frustration of this, surely it's something that we do need to look at going forward. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tilby.
Thank you, Chair. It's rather than a question, it's a comment. With regards to communication at a local level with neighbourhood policing and the members of the community, the recently appointed neighbourhood police officer in Bude has been encouraging people to use social media and Facebook, and that seems to be very popular and an easy way to communicate at probably a lesser level in terms of the crime implications. But it does show that the neighbourhood policing team are engaging at a local level. Just like to say thank you for that.
Thank you. Commissioner, would you like to comment on that at all?
Just saying thank you, and we'll pass that on. That's always good to hear. I think that the challenge is some local teams have got the capacity to look at Facebook and social media, and some local teams don't, and some are interested in doing it because they do it in their home life, and some aren't on it at all, so they don't know. So we've got a bit of an inconsistency there, but I think whatever a neighbourhood officer can do to make their local community more engaged and it works for them, that's what needs to happen. So I'll pass that back.
Thank you. I would like to wrap this item up after an hour, so I'll be prioritising those people who haven't spoken yet, and then hopefully we'll have some second bites of the cherry. Councillor Crowd.
Thank you, Chairman. This doesn't happen very often, but I would like to congratulate the Commissioner on her drive to open the public inquiry offices. As I say, it doesn't happen very often, but probably we might get an idea at some time about the footfall at the various offices that have just opened. That might be useful, and I'm sure you're keeping an eye on that just in case that, you know, if no one goes into the offices, then why open them? Yeah. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, and those comments have been noted. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Worth.
Thank you, Chair. My question relates to page 23 of the report, and I'm a great believer in maps. I think it's fantastic that you can see what we're talking about physically. But it would be remiss of me, and particularly coming from the Tamar Valley and the area, so I'm going to mention Tavistock, Launceston, Callington, down to Liscard, and obviously Saltash. And I accept that under the word Newton Abbot, there's an awful lot of Dartmoor and probably sheep. There seems to be a big gap in the middle. So really, I'd just like to learn from the Commissioner what would be the plans in supporting that pretty significant area and not relying on people having to necessarily go to Looe, Devonport, Bodmin, Bude, Oakhampton. It's quite a big gap. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. It's noted, There's a few there that we've been looking at. Bideford is one. There's an estate challenge with Bideford, but I know Councillor Hackett has spoken with the Chief Constable about a potential space in the square, I believe, in Bideford. So there's a few space areas there. Holsworthy's been mentioned before. If I can't do Bideford, we've had a look at a few bits in relation to that. I think for me in particular, we've got 4 left to open, and I will do my utmost to make sure that it is geographically sound as well as demand led. So I need to just look at both of those, but it is on my mind. Nikki Allen, the treasurer of my office, who also oversees the estates function, she stares at that map all the time and said, we've got to fill that gap. We've talked about Tavistock, we've talked about a number of different areas, but we are acutely aware there is a bit of a space there that's a bit too long distance, we believe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questioners who haven't spoken yet who would like to ask a question? Don't feel you have to, if it's already been covered. No? Okay, thank you. Councillor Lever, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Chair. I could bring it up under item 9 as well, but it is actually about police officers where access for the public to the police. So I don't know if you'd like me to do this now or at item 9.
Yeah, that's fine, Councillor.
Okay.
Do it now.
Okay, thank you. So it's great to see that there are more opportunities for the public to engage directly with the police. In North Devon, we have the police embedded in our district council in the back office, which is great. But as a council, we have bought the shopping centre in the middle of Barnstable, Green Lanes, and we're working very hard to try and create a sort of a community hub to move some of our staff there so that there is more face-to-face engagement. We would very much like the police to be there as part of the operation of that hub. So I'm really raising it with you. I imagine you may have heard through officers as well, but that is something that is an aspiration for us, because we do hear from people about the need to maintain a police presence in the town centre. And of course our town centre, we're the biggest town for 40 odd miles or so. I just raise that as a question. We would very much like to push for police presence in that community hub. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. I'm aware of the request actually from North Devon Council in relation to that. I think there was an initial thought about a public inquiry office element to it, but obviously we've already got one in Barnstable. One of my challenges at the moment is I have a temporary police station that we have created in Barnstable and 2 sites as well. And I believe in terms of whether or not the planning permission will allow us to stay for very long, is whether or not I have to build a new police station or find a new building for the police station. So I think part of it would be really helpful to have those discussions with you about some of that. I know that Superintendent Toby Davies is well aware of the request. So for me, it's an estates issue about what we're doing next and how long that will take, and whether that hub would be able to incorporate some of the things that we might need to do, or whether we're able to actually stay where we are and save me a lot of money.
Chair, thank you. I mean, for us, we are really clear that the existing temporary police stations are not accessible for a lot of people, and we are doing everything we can in terms of it being a place-making authority to support the vibrancy of our town centre, and actually bringing the health service in as well, and really thinking about it from the perspective about how do we make it easy for people to access services and to support the businesses that we have in our town centres, which of course, like all of our town centres, we are it isn't the easiest challenge in the world to support our town centres, and this could be an important part. There may be different ways of looking at it about how we do this. But yes, conversations ongoing would be useful. Thank you.
Chairman, if I may, we have had some discussions around trying to create a criminal justice hub in North Devon because of the magistrates' physical building challenges, the fact that we moved the police station, where's probation, where's some of the other agencies, that's fallen flat. That's not happening. So I think there's definitely a conversation worth having around what does that future estate look like with North Devon Council and how we can try and work together to maximise that. We're all trying to serve our communities better than we are now, and I appreciate your need to invest in the high street as well. So we'll see what we can do outside of this meeting, if that's okay.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hewin, did you want to come back?
Yes. With just a common sense, pragmatic approach. If the Commissioner wishes to put a leaflet in the envelope and it's taking somebody over an expense on the letter with the weight, what is the harm in notifying the Police Crime Commissioner she can make a difference to pay up that rate, you know, that it takes you to, and all councils. So that offer is there, and it's not, you know, Plymouth City Council never put in. Actually, if Plymouth City Council work it out to one level, and that's why they don't accept anything else, then if the offer comes in to pay the difference between the original level and the next level, surely that's a more pragmatic approach. And you could do it to all councils if they say no.
Vice Chair?
Thank you for your comments about Plymouth City Council, but we are here to scrutinise the Commissioner, and I think Plymouth City Council will obviously deal with things in their own way. But it's obviously not for today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that draws a line under this item. There are no more hands up, so I think I will propose that we note the report. Do I have a Vice Chair is to second? All in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to our next item of business, Operation Scorpion. This is set out in your packs from page 25 through to page 38. So I'll again hand over to the Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And I'm sorry, it was remiss of me at the last agenda item to not actually thank Felicity Ridgway for pulling that performance report together on public contact. We ended up pulling that together to make sense of the performance data that the force give us, and it was probably the most enlightening performance report we've managed to produce on public contact for a long time. So this is Felicity using her how do we look at this as a layperson's perspective and understand what the performance is, and she spent a long time writing that report. So I just wanted to thank her for that, because she's quite tired. So I think it's important that I recognise her efforts in that, because we've not had such a helpful performance report before like that. So sorry about that, Chairman. Just in terms of Operation Scorpion, I suppose one of the things around in Devon and Cornwall, you know, we say we're the lowest crime rate area. Crime is still increasing. We're just the lowest crime rate area still compared to other forces. One of the issues that we have, particularly with our coastal towns, our cities, is a real challenge around drugs. And it's been not just in Devon and Cornwall, it actually, the whole of the southwest region has the same types of problems. And that's why we've decided to work together as a region to try and tackle the problem, because as we all know, you can put a load of effort in and you might just push it to another force area. We've decided we're going to do our best to try and drive drugs out of the southwest. And in October 2021, the 5 police and crime commissioners and the 5 chief constables, we were at our regional planning event, and we identified that we would want to focus on drugs. We think there's been, and some of you may have seen me quoted in some of the national press, pathetically weak enforcement on the area of drugs, but particularly cannabis. And we believe that cannabis is the gateway drug to those other areas. You never meet a heroin addict who started out on heroin. You never meet a cocaine addict who started out on cocaine. And so we're really, really keen to try and drive a focus on cannabis. The threat that the police, the way they look at drugs, is they focus on drug deaths, the number of drug deaths, which naturally lead you to heroin, which then naturally leads the enforcement to heroin. And we're trying to open their eyes up to say, let's also look at the level of compliance with the law around drugs. And we believe there is a major lack of compliance on the law around cannabis. So we've got a few different phases that we've tried in our regional operation that was born from the Chief Constables, and we tested some different things on each phase. So I'm just going to talk you through each of them and sort of give you some of the results of what's happened. I think the fundamental shift as well that's happened is the government released and produced the document From Harm to Hope, which was to really look at the supply of the drugs chain in the country and internationally, to look at the drug treatment and how we improve treatment to people, and actually how we deal with the actual demand from the community around drugs. And I'd say that prevention side, that education side, is still quite weak by comparison to the other two. So I think there's been a drive nationally, there's been a drive locally, and we've made that into a regional particular drive in the southwest. The first phase that we trialled in March, and the way that we do this in the region, so we've got the regional organised crime unit, but they tend to deal with the very high end, the big wigs in the drugs market, that they go up the chain. And we're saying you spend a lot of time looking up the chain, but you don't do a lot looking down on the ground where the drug dealing is taking place. So we wanted to really focus on visible drug dealing. Phase 1, we moved from the sense of the regional organised crime unit delivering this, because they still do their bit. We have a force at each phase that leads that coordination across the southwest about where are we going to target, what are we going to do, and we talked about this ring of steel that we wanted to put around and use lots of things around roads policing, stopping access, stopping the couriering in the southwest. So phase 1 was our little test of how we were going to try and do this within existing resources, so there's been no investment at this stage at all. This is just trying to get the police to all do something at the same time, focused on the same efforts. So we focused on county lines drug dealing on the first one because there was also a national week of action. We thought we could add value to that. And you can see the results of those on the screen. One of the biggest things that we've said to the police is that we are not measuring them on arrests. That's not what we're interested in. We're interested in the safeguarding, the protection of children. We're interested in getting the drugs off the street, but we're really not interested in how many people you arrest. That's not the main aim of this. We want to get people into drug treatment. We want to get people who are out of the system who are being exploited. So we're quite keen to try and shift the police thinking about how we're doing some of these things. The second phase that was in July, we really wanted to get into that street-level drug dealing that people know it's in the same street all the time. It's been there for years and it never seems to go away. And particularly linked to antisocial behaviour, where people were using drugs in communities and causing antisocial behaviour in relation to it, such as leaving syringes in places, actually being very intimidating and high on the high street, those sorts of things. We wanted to deal with some of the antisocial behaviour. And you can see there was quite a focus on this one that came into the cannabis side of things. And I think for us, each one we've done, we've learned a bit more, and one of the biggest challenges we've had is how to record drug disruptions to show the level of effort the police are making and intervening and annoying and irritating drug dealers in our communities. So I think that's been our biggest challenge, but I'll wrap some of that up at the end. Phase 3 was in December, and we really wanted to focus on the evening and nighttime economy, sort of cocaine-using cohort of people, thinking that that's the fun thing to do as well as maybe have a drink. We had sniffer dogs out. It was a really proactive campaign. I was out in Plymouth on that particular one, and we went to a number of pubs on the Barbican, and Councillor Penberthy, you'll be delighted to know how welcoming every single landlord was or manager that was working that night to see the police visible in their communities to try and get people out who were using their establishments. And you'll be really pleased to know we didn't get a lot. Really pleased to know we didn't get a lot. Not the same as when I went out in Saltash, where you would expect there to be less. Plymouth was very well run evening and nighttime economy on the Barbican, really well run. But there was a focus on that evening and nighttime economy to try and remind people that we are interested in the fact that people might be taking drugs in the nighttime economy. Phase 4 was in April, and this was about really focusing on where there's drugs-related and gang violence in the area. I think for us in particular, I struggled with this one a little bit because I know that Gloucestershire were really keen to focus on this particular area, but we tend to have, we didn't have some that were known to us, particularly in this particular theme that we needed to focus on at the time we did this. So I would say we've been really interested to find out what intel we've got, where we get our intel from, and all of those things. And Crime Stoppers has been the backbone of every single one of these campaigns. So we promote reporting to Crime Stoppers anonymously, and it enables us to increase the intelligence that's going into the police so they know what's happening. And because Crime Stoppers get a lot less than the 101 phone line, it's much easier to analyse, much easier to action, and it's much easier for the public to feel safe doing it. So Crime Stoppers has been the backbone of this. Phase 5, this was really successful in the sense that this also linked to a national focus on Albanian organised crime groups that we had in the country. And fundamentally, the drive was it went and found lots and lots of cannabis farms run by organised crime groups. And there were 58 raids on commercial premises. But, you know, I went and visited one that we raided in Torquay. I went out with them on that day in an old Torquay nightclub that even I used to frequent as a youngster. Couldn't believe the size and scale right in the high street. No one noticed that it was there. It had been there for months and months and months. And, you know, I think if it wasn't for Crime Stoppers reporting and people saying that they'd seen things that were odd, we wouldn't have known that that was actually there. And I think that's the fascinating thing about this. It stinks, but you can hide it still in massive premises in a very visible place. So it's fascinating, that one, focusing on the cannabis. I think in terms of phase 6, again, we've linked this to National County Lines Intensification Week, and there's been a huge push around trying to establish taking as much money off of the drug dealers as possible, seizing their assets, all of those sorts of things that we really like to see happen to ruin their business model, make it harder for them to start up again. So you can see we've tried different things in each phase, and this is all about learning across the 5 forces. How do we harness the resources of the 5 forces, focusing in on one issue and doing this regularly and trying to make this part of business as usual? So it's been quite an interesting time to do it. The fact that overall, when you add them together, the level of disruptions that we've made, I think for us has been, we are really, really pleased that Devon and Cornwall Police, Avon and Somerset Police, Dorset and Wiltshire were in the top 4 most disruptions in the country. So we're beating all the other big forces in the top 4 for all the disruptions, total drug disruptions in the company. So we can see that we're making a big difference compared to nationally. We've reduced county lines. So the number of county lines have been reduced over the period in which we've done Operation Scorpion. And don't get me wrong, the police only know what they know, but their known ones had reduced and they didn't seem to have started up again anyway yet. So it's that's been quite interesting. I think for us at the moment, we've got another Operation Scorpion that's going to be planned. But we've also, on the back of this now, local teams who have now been involved in doing an Op Scorpion effort. Local teams are starting to run their own elements. So I'm really pleased. I mentioned Saltash because there's an acting sergeant there, Dan Lewis, who's just taken it off his own back to run pubs against drugs. And I think I thanked Cornwall Council at the last meeting for the level of involvement of the licensing team from the council and the support that they have as a partnership. And that's where we found cocaine in every pub, which we didn't find, with the sniffer dog, which we didn't find in Plymouth. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of showing you that it's not where you think it might be, and it shows how well, when you've got really good licensed establishments running and you've spent a lot of time and investment in the Barbican, that it actually does make a difference to that sort of side of things. So really pleased to see we've got a Pubs Against Drugs running again in a couple of weeks. I will be visiting, and lots of local teams are now considering how can they do this themselves. So there's been quite a lot of things on the back of Op Scorpion that's been helpful. I also just wanted to flag that there's been a recent case that was before the court only the other day, lengthy jail time that's happened. I don't know if you've seen that one. This is about a camper van on the Lizard Peninsula. where a whole county line, 36 drug lines were identified through it. 21 people were involved. It was heroin and cocaine worth a street value of 1.36 million. The leaders received lengthy jail time. I can't think of exactly what that was, but we're talking in the tens of years. But the lines that they were creating were to Exmouth, Dawlish, Teignmouth, Torbay, Ilfracombe, Penzance, Camborne and Hale. And fundamentally, this was links to Liverpool. So it's one of the reasons why we've had Op Medusa as well, which is Merseyside Police coming down and helping build the capability and understanding of how to tackle county lines in our force area. So really want to thank Merseyside Police as well in addition to that. But that's just recently happened. And I also want to thank Devon and Cornwall Police for being relentless around this too. So I'll leave that one there. I think that's the end of my presentation. We've got our next one in the spring, which will be led by Dorset Police, coordinating us across the region to do another phase of Op Scorpion. We haven't decided the theme yet, so that's yet to be decided, and I'll look forward to telling you the results of those in the future, Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. That was really interesting. Thank you. It's been a perception of mine in the past, and it is the past, that sometimes when you are faced with a group of drug addicts who are being antisocial, it's sometimes better to, if they're congregating somewhere quiet, like a beach, like an underpass or a public toilet, wherever it may be, better there than on the high street where it's high profile. I'm sort of sensing there's been a definite shift in attitude away from that. Is that something you recognise and could acknowledge?
Chairman, I'm one of these people who don't support consumption rooms. I'm one of these, so, you know, the answer to your question is, so they're not on the high street, what we'll do is identify a space for them to go and facilitate their drinking or drug taking, where we'll leave them alone. I don't think that's morally right. I think our aim should be to find these people, understand what's going on so we can get them the help that they need. We've got a challenge around drug treatment. While there's been an investment from the government into the combating drugs partnerships, I know across the whole Southwest what we've got is a gap in residential drug treatment, and that is something that us as 5 Police and Crime Commissioners are trying to address. So yeah, for me, we should be helping those people. It's not about whether it's that we want them out of the way, it's about why aren't we helping them? I get frustrated because sometimes the only way to help them is to do police action and intervention, because sometimes taking them into custody and now they'll be more likely drug tested as well, they'll be able to get some of that help, and it will be forced upon them as opposed to them being able to decide not to do it. So I think there's a bit about how we help people get into that treatment.
As you say, followed up with that multi-agency approach. That's really encouraging. Thank you. Vice Chairman, you have a question?
Yep, I do. Just wanted to pick up really what you were saying about Plymouth Nighttime Economy. I just would like to congratulate all the licensees, Cat McDonald, everybody who has signed up for Best Bar None, because that's where everyone working together has that fantastic outcome. And, you know, it's lovely to hear that, you know, our crime rate is going down here in Plymouth. But it does take a partnership to do that, and there's many people, and it was really nice to go to the award ceremony last week and see all the awards being given out to those licensees. But on another note, vaping. So we're hearing an awful lot, the government are mentioning it as well. We've obviously had motions on notice here in the council regarding drugs going into the vapes. So I'm not quite understanding how they all do that. So from a police point of view, I know it's very hard to try and to acknowledge what's in that vape, but what would you be doing towards the drug policy with that, with vaping? Sorry, that was a bit word-winded, so I apologise.
Thank you. One of the things at the moment, so my office is not doing anything in relation to vaping at the minute, but I do know that the police are actively, especially where they're underage selling as well, actively working with councils in that particular space. I think this is something yet to play out. One of the most interesting things that I'm shocked about is my daughter's 16. She tells me everybody vapes, apart from her. But I believe her because it's not there. But everybody vapes. So actually, the introductions into that, if they are containing drugs, like it'll be the CBD stuff, or the cannabis-related things, it's a very easy step into that movement. So I think this will be a little bit of a wait and see. I know obviously the government have been trying to make some changes around the whole vaping arrangement, but it's one to watch, I think, for our communities.
Yeah, and I totally agree. It's something new again, but like you explained, you know, they start at a low level, and the next thing we know, they're taking, you know, cocaine or something like that. So just on the radar, that's all I wanted to pick up. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you. Councillor Alvey.
Thanks, Chair. I was privileged last weekend or last Friday evening to actually spend some time with the No Excuses team, but they took part in one of the operations that you're describing that's really fallen out of Op Scorpion down in Penzance. Really impressive to see how the local policing team, including bringing in drugs dogs, but also the Vision Zero element from the No Excuses team, also creating that sort of ring of steel around the area, using intelligence to actually stop not just vehicles that they actually witnessed potentially committing an offence, but using the intelligence that they have through ANPR to actually target vehicles. So I can say as a witness that very, very successful operation. One of the frustrations from one of the motor police officers was that if drug taking is illegal, why is there a limit as to the amount of drugs in your system before you get convicted of driving under the influence of drugs? But I appreciate that's not for today. But that was his one frustration.
Chairman, if I may, I appreciate you going out with the team as well. I hear it was a bit of a 12-hour shift. You finished at 1 a.m. in the morning. But there's a few things around the drug testing for officers by the roadside. We've got a few things that have improved over the years, but still a challenge to us. The forensics provider for those, the drugs and the alcohol wipes and all the testing that they do, we had a real tricky area where they weren't able to supply enough. So forces had to stop doing as much testing. We've had some real challenges around it. I think there's a few things that I've found quite fascinating, and we've had discussions before nationally about if you're caught drink or drug driving, whether or not you should lose your licence straight away. And that is a really controversial discussion, but certainly one I'd be interested in having, because there's always an excuse that you can't afford to not work. But, you know, if you're going to take an illegal substance and get behind the wheel, it's a challenge. But I'll go back and find out about this level. I'm not aware of the drug level. I'm aware of the alcohol level, because that's a legal limit, but I wasn't aware of the drug level, so I'll go and check that when I go back.
Thank you. Councillor Tilby.
Thank you, Chair. I may have missed this in your report, Commissioner. But in phase 6, you refer to the number of arrests, or the round that led to the number of arrests, and there was 26 children. I was just wondering if you had some idea of the age range. So I'm concerned that the children that are being approached by this sort of incident, they're getting younger.
I don't have that age range in front of me, obviously under 18, but I think this was one of the most alarming, because it was the most children that we identified through this process. I think the only thing I can say is at least we found them. It's very sad, but I don't have the ages in front of me to tell you that today.
Also, could you mention something about the safeguarding? I assume that is for the children, and what sort of form does that take?
So there's a range of things. Some of the people that they'll identify through this will be those that have been cuckooed, likely to be cuckooed, been exploited before, been befriended before by people. So they'll put some interventions in place. They might even do things like community protection notices, community protection warnings against people not to go near them. They'll use some of the other aspects that they can do to safeguard that individual. So they are often not just police interventions. It might be that they've contact adult social care, children's social care to do some of those things as well. So it's all about identifying them, that they've been involved in it, and working out what the next best thing is. But often it's to try and stop the person who was getting near them to get near them again is one of those main aims.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm glad to hear that you're actually engaging with the local authorities at the other overview and security committees, which I'm on. So it's good to hear that we are actually helping you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And if those figures are accessible, could they be circulated to the committee? So I think what you're driving at is whether they're late teen, early teens, whatever. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. Two really quick questions. One, you mentioned that there is a gap in residential drug treatment. I wonder if you could quantify that for us. And the other question is, if we are in a position to be able to get something out with council tax bills about, reporting, I would just ask that that Crime Stoppers is there in large letters, because one of the real issues we certainly have in our community, and probably other councillors do as well, is that actually drug dealing from houses and indeed associated crimes such as prostitution and antisocial behaviour and noise and violence and all of those associated difficulties, what we hear repeatedly is, I don't want to report it because I am scared of intimidation and the results of doing that. So the anonymous, it's really great to hear that Crime Stoppers has been at the forefront of that. I would be really grateful if we could continue to promote Crime Stoppers as an anonymous way that people can report. Thank you.
Chairman, if I may, we've got a contract with Crime Stoppers as the 5 police and crime commissioners, so we've got a bit of an ongoing relationship with them, and all forces work with them anyway. They've already got their arrangements in place. I think I might have put it on the last council tax leaflet actually, but I will, because we're doing quite a big push, but we'll my council tax leaflet's just going to be a how to contact people at the moment by the looks of it, but my job is to tell them how I've spent their money, so we'll have to get the balance right of how big the leaflet becomes, but yeah, thank you.
Could you answer my first question at all, or maybe now or maybe at some later point, about quantifying the gap in the residential treatment for those with drug difficulties?
Yeah. Chairman, each individual combating drugs partnerships will be aware, which are run by local authority public health directors, that is within your control rather than mine, will be aware. But I've seen the regional assessment from the Southwest Director of Public Health, because I work on the drugs agenda on a regional basis to access some of the more senior people in both health and probation to get more access to them. But the gap that we're aware, I don't know if it's a national gap, I just definitely know it's a regional gap. There wasn't the funding in the money from government to be able to build up, and you can't build up residential treatment overnight. You're talking about capital, you're talking about revenue. But there is a gap, and I know I know Plymouth used to host, and it wasn't funded by Plymouth City Council, but some NHS drug treatment centres that closed down a few years ago because they changed their commissioning model, thinking that community treatment in the community was the better solution. So I think there's as police and crime commissioners, this is a political push rather than a public health push. So we are pushing in 2 ways. One is we need to establish, and it might not be that they're in Devon and Cornwall, but we need more residential drug treatment centres for people who need to be taken out of their communities, away from their associates, and helped better. And we also need more abstinence-based treatment models, because the ones that local authorities commission are generally harm reduction. They're not abstinence-based, but abstinence-based is free and it works. And we've got the prison model that we're trying to look at, which is obviously a dependency model, which instead of getting them off the drug when they get in there, they give them the ability to be dependent on a prescribed drug instead. So that we're doing political pushes around drug treatment at the moment, and that's what it would need from a local authority perspective, is a political push around changes to how your drug treatment is funded, because public health will just carry on with their harm reduction model at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Actually, all of my questions have been answered, but could I just take the opportunity to say a thank you for this work. It's so impressive, and what leaps out to me is 389 children and adults that have been safeguarded, because we all see the effects of drugs drugs dependency, it's not just crime that happens after, it's social disruption and sometimes a complete loss of life right at the end of it. And seeing young people in communities in Exeter, which you can see are being targeted for drugs, starting off with cannabis. So I'm probably not going to be popular with a lot of people for not trying to call for cannabis to be deregulated, because I see it as a gateway to and a first step on the pathway along with. So I just want to say thank you. Sorry, no question, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Those comments have been noted. Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, completely agree with you. I've got a 14-year-old and it is endemic in secondary schools without a shadow of a doubt, completely endemic, and it's something we really need to be thinking about. Specifically on Operation Scorpion, obviously it's, every single adult and child that we safeguard is a great thing. But in terms of asking much the same question I asked as to the previous question, what does success look like? What's the ring, is the ring of steel working? Because actually, the reality is it's great that, last month those arrests were made, but the fact that they're still being made in those numbers, can you just give us what you feel about what it looks like when the ring of steel is really working?
Councillor Thomas, there's a couple of things here. So part of us doing this operation was to get a bit of a culture change and step change in policing about drugs. And so it has been quite enforcement heavy, has been quite a lot of that. The aim of where we want to go to next is it's linked to the serious and organised crime. They've got an initiative called Clear Hold Build, but you could use it on any crime type. We need the Op Scorpion to go in and clear, and then we need councils and other partners to help hold that space and the community to then help build beyond it. That's more of a long-term plan. So what I would need to do is consider focusing on just a couple of geographies where the partners are ready and relentlessly do it for about 4 years. That the examples where we've got a successful Clear Hold Build based on serious and organised crime, they've chosen their target areas based on the serious and organised crime that's happening in that community and the fact that it felt unsafe and nobody wanted to use the play park and there was drug dealing and all of that. It has taken a number of years to get to a point of that's now got a play park that's usable, of families are back out using it. So I think for us, and it might well be something if after the elections, if I'm back, I might choose a couple of geographies because it needs the reason I need to help choose it and not just the police with their statistics is I need to work out which partners are ready to do the next bit. So I know, for example, it's been really tricky in Torbay to actually do any sort of hold and build after any sort of clear. So we've had a constant problem, and Torbay have been positioning themselves recently to be ready for that. And that means that actually now's the time to go in with the police and do the full whole package, if you like. So for me, I think I'm going to have to potentially choose a couple of persistently problematic challenge areas and work really relentlessly for a few years. That's what's in my mind at the moment. Because at the moment we are just doing a bit of this, and I think we might need to do just a bit of that and keep a push on it.
Thank you. Councillor Ewing.
Thank you. Right, I've got a couple. If we talk about the vaping, first of all, I know it's one of the top priorities for the Local Government Association at the moment, is to make vaping illegal. In schools, as Councillor Thomas has said, it is endemic. You and I have had this conversation before about our girls. And it is a serious issue. It's being portrayed at the moment, I think it's Coronation Street, with a storyline at the moment, with a young child being groomed, basically, and with selling vapes in schools, which we've talked about, it's even going on in primary schools. So it is a really, really serious issue. The drugs going into the vapes and how we know they're going into the vapes is a question that, no one's anywhere near answering yet. But that is something we need to do. With regard to Crime Stoppers, is it worth them being able to put in a sticker for the schools to put on the back of toilet doors, like we have for grown-ups with domestic abuse and things like that. I wonder if it's worth us doing something like that for children to have a number that they can feel safe calling. And then my other point is, at South Devon and Dartmoor Community Safety Partnership, we're hearing a lot of information in the community regarding pingers, pinger with a Z on the end, which is MDMA and ecstasy mixed together, used by young people. So we welcome Operation Scorpion's approach, focusing on local drugs networks that supply drugs to children in our local communities and in addition to county lines. So, yeah, we're ready to work with you.
Chairman, if I may, I suppose that the challenge around the vaping is, at the moment, it's only illegal to sell below a certain age. So, and I'm aware of the supply that's coming in through children into schools. So nice parents that they've got, or people that are supplying them with that. So I think there's probably a lot of work to do there. I think if the Local Government Association have identified it, we work with them nationally as the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, and it may well be something that we can look at from a national perspective about what that solution might need to look like. I think just in terms of the enforcement around other drugs, my biggest worry is that there's been very little enforcement around Class B and Class C. And Class C, I mean steroids. You know, steroids, I hear, again, anecdotally, because there's not a lot of data collected on it, rife in gyms, rife, apparently, in places like rugby clubs. If you want to be good at rugby, apparently steroids is the way to go. I'm only saying this anecdotally, Chairman. I have no actual evidence of this, but this is what's being said in the community, and there is not really any focus of enforcement on some of these other areas. So I think we need to stretch policing and stretch partners to actually start making sure that people don't think all these things are legal and lawful and okay to do, because nothing's happening if you do it, and nobody's really getting caught. So there's an education exercise I think we need to help do, which you can do through enforcement. Certainly, we're trying to teach drivers through enforcement to learn to drive better, and I think that is actually some of the way we can do it through drugs. But I will ask my colleague, who's the chair of the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, about what the work programme is with the LGA. I know antisocial behaviour is one of them, but I will go back and ask about the vaping question.
Yeah, sure.
Where you're saying about not enough enforcement, I would like to concur with you. I know of groups that are known to drug deal, etc., and you often get the answer from the police officers, anecdotally, that we're looking for the one who supplies them. And to me, you should be looking at anybody, not just waiting for the big fish. You know, sometimes eradicating the little fish might make the big fish disappear, but probably groom more young people to do it.
Chairman, if I may, that was the reason for the instigation of Operation Scorpion, and to do it across the whole southwest, because a lot of forces weren't dealing with that community level, visible drug dealing. They were trying to go after the ones who supply it, the ones who do it, and they're already doing that, but it's not having an effect on the communities that are being affected, who visibly can see it and feel. In some places it feels lawless, and they feel, what is the point of reporting it, because it's been there for 20 years, that problem. So we've got some issues that we need to solve, but that was the reason behind instigating Op Scorpion, to get all forces to start alerting themselves a lot more to that localised effort, rather than the big, difficult, takes years to get to, to take them to court. Those sorts of ones. Those are still happening, but this is in addition to it.
Thank you. Councillor Hackett.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in danger of conflating two issues here, but I think there's a relevance, and it's trying to dovetail certain things in that I wish to say. I know that a lot of the people who take drugs have mental health issues, who are very vulnerable. And there are two things that have come up in my area Firstly, the closure of our link centres in North Devon, which provide that vital, safe place for people to go with issues and to work with them. Now, Devon County Council are keen on closing them. Can we please, as a panel and yourself as a Police and Crime Commissioner, support these link centres, because it is giving that safe area where we can build the mental health issues up and give them confidence and repair a lot of the damage they might have experienced. And I think it's vital we keep them open. And secondly, APOS, places of safety. I've campaigned for some time that we need a safe place in North Devon. We haven't got it. The police are still telling me that they're having to transport people to Exeter and beyond, and they find it it's a great drain on their time. They're not feeling productive in moving people up and down the North Devon Link Road to Exeter and sometimes beyond to Plymouth and Torbay. So please, 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 I know I've been going on about this for at least 4 or 5 years. We need that place of safety in North Devon. One police officer told me recently, it feels like he's working in a restaurant kitchen. He's getting all these orders coming in from the restaurant outside, and he has not got the resources in the kitchen, if you like, to deal with the calls that he's been asked to deal with. And you know, one of the officers I spoke to was a long-standing officer who had perhaps 23 officers in the Barnstable region, and now he's down to a mere fraction of that figure. They desperately need all the resources they can, and the link centres and APOS will give them an extra tool in their armoury. So please, I'd welcome your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, the Link Centre, Councillor Hackett, I've heard of them. I'm not involved in funding them or anything like that, but if you think there's a specific role that I can play, please feel free to write to me about that. That might be helpful. The second one around the place of safety, I think the thing that will help resolve that is the Right Care, Right Person national scheme that they are encouraging all forces and their partners to do, which is to make sure when a person may be in some form of crisis that they get the right help from the right agency at the right time, rather than it always be the police. So there is that happening, and the thing is, I don't have time. At the moment, Devon and Cornwall Police have chosen to go at the pace of the partners, which is slow. So I've just agreed, and I need to formalise it, that I will chair those meetings now to bring pace to them, because you're going to save thousands of hours of police officer time, and places like Barnstable would be a really good example of another agency needs to step in and actually deliver on that. And that's what the Right Care, Right Person is supposed to do. And there's national protocols that have been signed up by the NHS, by policing, by a range of other agencies, but at the local area, it's been very slow. So I think I need to bring some pace to encourage partners to speed up how we make this work, because it's happening in other areas quicker than here. And just in terms of the resources issue, I can promise you, no matter what budget I brought to you next year or the year after, we'll never have enough resources, neither will councils, to deal with all the demands that come in. It's why you have to prioritise. It's why we have a police and crime plan, and I set 4 priorities. I try and keep it as simple as possible for policing. I set 4 priorities. These are the things that I want to see being delivered on more than anything else. So there are challenges around prioritising, and it's very difficult for an individual officer himself, but that's why they have the complicated systems that usually try and do it for them. I don't think we'll ever have the full resources that we need, but it is about how do we individually prioritise, corporately prioritise, and how do I secure the resources that I am enabled to get for policing with you as Police and Crime Panel.
Thank you. Before I make the recommendation, Councillor Lever, did you want to come in on that specific point?
Yeah, thank you very much. Very much appreciate the difference between public health and dealing with crime per se. in relation to the link centres, it is there's public consultation open until the 6th of December with County Council, and I completely support Councillor Hackett's call for us to consider mental health and the impact on people's potential offending behaviour. It would be interesting for us to maybe send that to you so you could have a look and potentially respond to that consultation. Which brings me on to actually about young people in particular. We've talked quite a lot about young people, and I think that the kind of issues which certainly are coming to my door are around hate crime, particularly around gender, transgender, gender fluidity, things like that. There's a lot of that going on. I was just recently talking, this is only anecdotal, but I think perhaps it illustrates a wider point, that the resources available to protect people from crime and to enable people to protect themselves are, there is a gap. I understand that there is currently a 2-year wait for a young person seeking CAMS assistance. This is a particular young person I was talking to who's going through the whole transgender thing. You know, we are seen perhaps as a very sort of, well, somewhat old-fashioned and traditional kind of community. It is a very difficult place for many of our young people at the moment. And hate crime and being able to support people to avoid getting involved sort of through mental health issues is something that I would just raise as an issue for your further consideration.
Chairman, if I may, I think one of the things that might be worth being aware of is our Young Victims of Crime service that we have. So last I was aware there was maybe a 6-month wait list on that for therapeutic services, but they'll support them through those 6 months. They won't be left alone. They'll just have a universal service up to that point. But if they need specialist support, then we can do that through the Young Victims of Crime service. I think that a lot of people don't know that service exists, and if they've been a victim of hate crime, that is something that they can certainly be referred to. Just go through victim support, the general victim support that we have a contract with, and they will be able to guide them through to that service. We have actually just launched a new victim care website, so if you I think it's I want to say victimcare-dc.org.uk, but don't quote me on that. Oh, right. So again, there's lots of information on there for young people and adults around what the journey looks like. But yeah, if they really do need some support, then the Young Victims of Crime service is something that we commission through the Commissioning Intentions Plan in order to help people under 18.
Thank you. I wonder if there's an opportunity for those links to be sent to us as panel members.
Thank you. As chair, then I will propose we note the plan as set out, and we've recorded those comments and inputs. So thank you very much for making those points today. So I propose from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Vice chair, all in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to item 8, the Police and Crime Plan scorecard. We normally take this as read, as it's all supplied within your packs. I will ask the Commissioner, are there any highlights or no? Okay, we'll go straight on to questions. Councillor Penberby.
Thank you. I just wanted to raise the point in 2.11 because we quite often talk about the importance of neighbourhoods, local responses, councillor advocates and everything else. We've been accepting issues on data over quite a number of meetings, and it's great to see some here. However, we're now told that it's first quarter 24 before that neighbourhood data becomes available. Now, first quarter could be the 1st of January. You've said you'll come back to January 6th. It could be the 31st of March. I just wanted to make a note, Commissioner, that actually, if we're going to do our jobs as local councillors or as local authorities, if we're going to work with you to try and tackle these issues, we can't do it on the basis of Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly data. Can you please put some real pressure on that means when they say first quarter, we actually get something very, very early, and if it's not, I think we will be expressing more extreme displeasure at data and our ability to work in partnership with the police to effectively do things our communities are asking us to do.
Chairman, I completely share your frustration around this, and I was informed early on that it took another force area 18 months to recover from the implementation of their new crime recording system. I was sort of promised, oh, we'll aim for 12 months, but the point is we are now 12 months. November last year was when it was implemented. I do know they are working tirelessly on this because we talk about this, and I mean, I'm sure Felicity would want to speak about this, the level of meetings and interventions that we've done to try and get this data faster. I will take your consideration back about January, when I go.
I think it's really important. I represent a ward with a very high student population. In fact, we might have some of my constituents sitting up in the gallery at the moment. I think it's very difficult for us to actually work on some of those really targeted things in terms of youth, domestic violence, hate crimes and protected characteristics if we're not able to actually see all of that. And the things we keep on talking about here are really, really important. And so, just hammering home, if they don't get it any other way, let's do it on a diversity and equalities route, that actually we're not able to do our public sector equalities duty if we don't have the data. Thank you.
But brilliant argument, Councillor Penberthy. I will take that back.
Thank you. Vice Chairman.
Nails are flicking. I do apologise. Do you want me to repeat that? Page 43. At the top, we have hospital admissions for under 25s for sharp objects. I'm hearing from this role that knife crime is on the increase. I don't see anywhere where knife crime would be on here. Should it be on here? Should it not be on here?
I will let Felicity answer this specific because some of it's technical, but the hospital's admissions data isn't our data. So, and there is issues that another partner agency has got. So, I will hand over to Felicity for some of the technical challenges.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Yes, as the Commissioner says, unfortunately this data is not our data. It comes from the hospitals through a national system. It's then provided to us through Public Health England. It's an interesting measure in itself anyway, in so much as this data indicates the numbers of people admitted to hospital, which is reliant on hospital admission policy as opposed to the actual number of crimes. Separately, there is work ongoing that we're doing to look at different crime types that involve knife crime, and that will be captured within the violent crime measure. We are expecting the next update of that national level data, though, to be provided to us through Public Health England in December, so that'll be available on the next scorecard.
Thank you, Felicity. And obviously that'll be over 25s as well as under 25s we'll be recording as well. Yeah. Well, it'll be in here. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman. On the back of what Councillor Penberthy just said, Commissioner, one of the key updates that you're giving us in this report is a significant reduction in hate crime, 618 down. So I suppose my question is, notwithstanding the caveats you've given us before around this data, how should we read that update? Should we infer that hate crime is dropping, or should we be sceptical around the reporting mechanisms?
Councillor Thomas, are you referring to the number of recorded hate crimes on the indicator? So from the baseline, it has gone up about 300. I'm trying to read this without reading glasses. Around 300 from the baseline of I want to say 19. So I'm just trying to let you see where the figure is. So it has gone up, and as you know, whenever we have this conversation, and it's not a good enough answer, but it's the best you can get from policing, is hate crime reporting does change according to national media, national conversations that are happening. But also, we did quite a lot of scrutiny on the when I brought the hate crime scrutiny last panel, I think it was. The diversity team have been doing a really good job in supporting people who have been reporting hate crime, and there's a high level of satisfaction from victims. I think it's about 73%. So I think in terms of that, at the moment, Councillor Lever mentioned there was an increase in hate crime in her community that she believed, or more awareness that you've had of what's been going on in our communities. It is one to watch. It's why we put it in here, because I can't measure what I want to watch, which is community cohesion. Because what I'm trying to establish is our communities becoming more hateful, or are we just having the odd random thing happen when there's a national conversation? But are our communities becoming more hateful? Are you less safe because you have a protected characteristic? That we still can't fully answer, but the hate crime scrutiny that I brought last panel meeting should have given you some reassurance that there's some good systems in place, good support in place, and we don't believe that you are less safe if you have a protective characteristic across Devon and Cornwall, not in any significant way, but that's why we need to watch this one, and I have introduced it as a mission critical indicator for panel to see.
Chairman? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, look, I don't disagree with that. I'm just making the point that I think you need that narrative said publicly, because obviously, you know, it is in the public papers as a key update that we're, you know, and it is specifically said, you know, fewer hate crimes were recorded for the 12 months of September 23 when compared to the same period last year. So I just think we need that narrative, because otherwise it looks prima facie like we're saying hooray.
Chairman, if I may, one of the things we've also realised in that every time we do this, we change it. So I'm sure the next election you'll have another set of indicators and presented in another different way, and we improve it each time we've done it. We also have said, because we've got a baseline which we've set, and we're measuring performance in our indicator pack against that baseline, that's not showing you whether there's been incremental or any improvement in between. So we've realised that actually there's been a dramatic drop in something, so there's been a drop in hate crime, but from the baseline it's still up. So we do need to really understand when we're looking at this data what we are looking at, and I think we need to work out as well a way to present it that helps you see that there's improvements being made versus what we've put as a hard baseline, because it's not a target. The baseline is not a target, but we say it's gone up or down from it. So it makes it look like we've set a target as well. So it's a bit complicated, some of the narrative on this, but it's really helpful if we all understand what it's trying to tell us.
Thank you. Councillor Worth.
Thank you. Doesn't time fly? A year ago, I was appointed as Chair of Scrutiny in Cornwall for Economic Development, which includes transport. And I took a presentation and when we were discussing our 20s Plenty and the rollout of the 20 mile an hour implementation. And one of the questions that came up in that meeting was effectively the enforcement of 20 mile an hour in rural areas. And and I note here we're seeing that we've got community speed watch, and we're seeing that, you know, clearly there's been targeted effort in this area. But I asked the question then, and I'm still not clear on it, is what is the actual level of enforcement that goes on in Cornwall in particular for the 20 mile an hour? What results have we got out of that? Because what I do feel in our rural locations is people see the signs go up, and it goes round the community, we've got our new signs, and then nobody gets penalised. And it would only take one or two to get the message out, which is all about local enforcement, that's the point, but it's that risk that you might come round that corner and there could be somebody there with some sort of equipment, whatever they're going to do, I don't know, in enforcing and making that happen. So I'm pretty conscious at a Cornish level that question will probably come up again, but as I'm sat here, I'd like to put it to you that, you know, to give you some warning that we'd like to know what that level of enforcement is.
Chairman, if I may, you're the envy, by the way, of people of Devon, because they all ask, what's the policy for 20 in Devon? And it's not quite as strong as you've managed to achieve in Cornwall, in that you will implement it where a community says that they want it and you do a consultation. So you are pushing out the 20 is plenty. Devon and Cornwall Police will enforce on 20-mile-an-hour zones, as long as it's the red ring and it's a proper enforceable sign. The biggest way that you can get Devon and Cornwall Police to support the enforcement is to have a community speed watch scheme. I don't know the types of roads. When you're saying villages, there may be some that the road is not appropriate for a community speed watch. But if a community speed watch scheme is established, through Vision Zero, we fund the speed detection officers, and they will go along and support a community speed watch scheme. So they can drag the police resource into that community. So for me, it's about the community trying to organise themselves, if they would be willing to try and drag that police resource in. The other issue, we've got Vision Zero in a few weeks, which I'll see a few of you at to discuss some of the road safety challenges. There's no reason why Cornwall couldn't raise that at Vision Zero. I think we're meeting in December. Raise that issue about what is the enforcement level, how much have you done? Could ask some of those questions. I'm not sure we've got a full policy at Vision Zero, but we've definitely got a policy in Devon and Cornwall Police, which is that they will enforce 20-mile-an-hour zones. But it really does need the community speed watch teams, because they can enforce 20s to help drag that resource in, because they can't be everywhere. So what they're doing is prioritising where there's a community speed watch scheme to go and support them to do actual enforcement on the same time the community speed watch team is there. So that's the bit for me, is it's community driven really in terms of trying to drag that resource into the community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this report. I can just say, in terms of Cornwall, fantastic. You've got 20 miles an hour limit, but Devon, we can only look at that and marvel that you've got that. Anyway, that's not what my question was about. I'm just looking at page 43, and particularly looking at the number of ASB incidents recorded by the police. Good to see that that is coming down, because I think it's something that really impacts on people, how people feel about where they live and where they shop and all of that kind of stuff. I'm only going to speak in terms of North Devon here, but certainly in terms of Barnstaple Town Centre. We believe that part of the reason that ASB has been coming down is because we've had street marshals that were originally paid for by the Safer Streets Fund. That fund, they're now being funded by the District Council. Again, I go back to this core issue for us about the financial squeeze on public services, on local council budgets, and when that funding comes to an end at the end of the current financial year, we currently have not identified alternative funding for them. So those street marshals are likely to go. I wondered if you could comment on how the Police and Crime Commissioner and maybe all of us councils together can again try to tackle this particular problem. And I suppose allied to that is, I actually rather wonder whether the street marshals effectively are fulfilling a role that used to be done by PCSOs. And I wonder again if you could comment on that, please.
Thank you, Chairman. There's a few things. Street marshals are brilliant. I mean, the more uniformed presence you can have in any community, the safer people generally feel. And it doesn't always have to be a police officer. It just needs to be someone that they might be able to trust in a position of some sort of authority, who might have access to an organisation that can help. One of the things I would suggest is, in the commissioning intentions plan, where we've had quite a lot of commissioning for antisocial behaviour around the youth outreach, and the Antisocial Behaviour Victims of Crime service, I am trying to rethink what I can do to assist and facilitate councils around antisocial behaviour. One of the areas that's a challenge is the legal framework for some of the orders or notices and warnings that you give to people is with the council and not with the police. It's a civil enforcement. So we do need to work together on how we enable that civil enforcement to happen. And I am aware there is some challenges around the level of legal capacity within local authorities to actually, if you need to escalate it. So the police officer can give the warning, can give the notice, but the escalation procedure, it may be with the council. And I'm looking at the moment about how I can help councils with their legal capacity to ensure that people who breach those orders actually get access to escalation procedures. So there's an issue around that, but I think I am minded to work out how I can help local authorities. I'm proud that Torbay Council have been recruiting 2 antisocial behaviour officers. I think you might even be in the interview process of at the moment. Thank you for that. That's building your capacity of it. So I think the answer is, it sounds like it's something that's needed in the community, and we'll need to work out how to fund it. We had this conversation with Councillor Hackett at the last panel meeting. He has the same issue around the street marshals. How do we sustain them? I think we need to have a conversation, and perhaps at panel, some of the commissioning intentions plan, I'm gonna need to rethink what it is that I want to see that we need to fund, and whether I need to change what we're doing there. You're not the only area that's asked for it. But it's something that is it's on my mind at the moment about how can I assist.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Councillor Ewing.
Thank you for this report, Commissioner. I've just got some information from the South Devon and Dartmoor Community Safety Partnership that they're currently investigating a collaboration with other community safety partnerships across Devon to undertake a campaign to increase reporting on hate crime. In relation to 6.1 of your report, which is page 59, the Community Safety Partnership continues to focus on young people who are victims of crime and have raised awareness of stalking and harassment via online bite-sized pieces, and have got money from yourself to work with peer researchers to deliver the Alice Ruggles presentation in assemblies. In Teambridge, a portion of the Levelling Up funding is being used to build resilience in young people against harmful sexual behaviour, which would also address sexual offences. So, just so you know how the pennies are being spent.
Chairman, it's heartwarming to hear, and actually we had your head of community safety come and do a presentation to all, Becky Hewitt, come and do a presentation to all the councillors at our ASB seminar earlier was it this week, or time's flying, this week, to talk about actually the efforts you're also making in terms of your community protection notices, your community protection warnings, and how creative you're being to tackle some of the most tricky individuals in the community, and making a huge difference to both the feelings of that community but the individual that's involved. And really heartwarming to hear that also you've been doing that online parenting for teenagers. I haven't yet been able to go to one, but I hear they're absolutely going down a storm to give parents more advice about how you parent a teenage child and understand them better and how to get messages across. So I have to say, South Devon, Dartmoor, Teambridge, that whole area of community safety partnership has been outstanding, and trying to help other community safety partnerships do what they do. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. No more hands up, so I will propose from the chair that we note the report. Vice Chair to second. All in favour? Thank you. Carried. Okay, we're getting there. Item number 9, the Commissioner's Update Report. Again, this is all in your packs. Commissioner, are there any highlights you would like to point out?
Just a couple of bits, Chairman, if I may. Really pleased to see that Prisoners Building Homes Project won a national award nominated by the Cabinet Office and colleagues for the collaboration work that we've done with prisons, probation, contractors, and we are building in mid-Devon at the moment some of these homes. So thank you to how we've managed to move that project forward. The other bit just to flag is because we've got the budget coming up, you know, I do my annual survey. That is launched today. Would really appreciate if you can share that as much as possible. Would really like to get, we usually have about 4,000 people respond to that survey. Would love to get a lot more than that. Got some people in the audience, would love you to share that with your colleagues and get as many people filling that out as possible, because that really does inform my thinking about what I'm going to do for the budget and what I'm going to do to prioritise in terms of the work. So I just wanted to flag those two things.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councillor Hackett.
Thank you, Chair. I've sat on this panel for about 7 years now, and when I first sat here, we used to get the Chief Constable to all the meetings. And I happened to have the Acting Chief Constable up at Bideford earlier this month, and I asked him, would we be seeing him at the Police and Crime panel meetings? And he said he would love to come. He'd be very interested to hear what we all say, but he hasn't received an invitation. Now, your predecessor, Tony Hogg, used to see it as part of the democratic process. And we used to have the Chief Constable here when, as I said, I was first here, right the way until he just vanished into the thin air, shall we say, and we thought he was going to turn up at budget meetings, but he never did. So clearly it is a matter of getting an invitation from yourself. When I come to these meetings, I get a number of things raised by my fellow councillors. Could I bring this up at the Police and Crime Committee? Could this go to the Chief Constable? And I think it would be very valuable to have him here both formally to see what we are all saying, but also to have an informal dialogue afterwards with issues that we can't raise here, but we do need to raise with him. Because getting hold of a Chief Constable is not the easiest thing to do. And it is an irregular meeting that we have with him. So please, could he be invited? Chief Constables come to other police and crime panel meetings throughout the country, and there should be no reason why he isn't here. And on the subject of invitations, the Town Council of Bideford have been sending you an invitation to come since earlier in the summer and would really love to see you. So if you'd like to answer those two questions, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hackett. Before I hand over to the Commissioner, I just have to point out as a point of record that we are here to scrutinise the Commissioner. Now, I understand that you're requesting the Commissioner invite additional officers along, which I shall hand over to the Commissioner to answer, but just wanted to place that on the record. And also, we are a public meeting as well. Everybody's welcome to attend. And also, the YouTube live stream is a very handy tool for anybody who wants to watch our proceedings today.
This may be true, but we had the Chief Constable here formally. Nothing has changed. And as I said, the predecessor for Alison, Tony Hogg, he saw it as an essential part of the democratic process to be seen and see. And I do not know if the Chief Constable is watching today. I'd like to hope he is, but we would like to see him. We would like to communicate with him both ways. And also, he can't give his input in live time to the meeting. So, please, we would like to see the Chief Constable in his place.
Yeah. Again, input would be a matter of this panel scrutinising.
Absolutely,
again,
but it happened before, and there's no reason why it can't happen now. I'm labouring my point, but it is a very important point.
And it's on the record, Councillor, don't worry. Commissioner.
I don't need to reiterate what the Chairman's already said about this being about you scrutinising my actions. I understand there is an appetite, obviously, to see the Chief Constable. I do normally try to bring the Chief Constable to the budget meeting, because that's the really, you know, if you've got operational questions that link to some of the funding decisions, it's really helpful to have the Chief Constable there. So, well, we'll likely be bringing the Chief Constable to the budget meeting, because that's really important for you to get a rounded view of what's going on, rather than just what I might be proposing. Secondly, there's a lot of work to be done in the force at the moment, as you may be aware, and I would not want to bring the Chief Constable to this meeting. If you needed to contact him, Councillor Hackett, I can promise you, if you emailed him, he would respond. That would be something that I would suggest. If you've got issues being raised in your local area and they're not getting resolved by the local team, please feel free to email the Chief Constable directly. I'm sure he would not mind, and I'm sure he would respond.
I'd like to come back on that, because here we have a Chief Constable, an acting Chief Constable, who clearly told me in Bideford he would like to come. So why can't he have an open invitation? It's not a question of you bringing him along. If he wishes to come, he can.
Through you, Chair. There is an open invitation to any person who lives in Devon and Cornwall to come along to this meeting, and it's perfectly reasonable that they can come along and sit in the back. Now, it is not the role of this committee to scrutinise the Chief Constable or the operational matters of Devon and Cornwall Police. So we will not be issuing an invitation to the Chief Constable to come along and be scrutinised, as this is not the responsibility of this committee.
Can I just come back and say, on what terms did the Chief Constable previously attend these meetings for the first 3 or 4 years that I was here?
I'll happily have that discussion with you following this meeting, because I'm going to have to find out myself, because I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
And it may well have been, as I understand it, by the invitation of the Commissioner rather than this committee. We'll certainly look into that for you, Councillor Hackett. But as I've already stated several times today, it is not the responsibility of this committee to scrutinise the operational activity of the Chief Constable.
Okay, I was just looking for continuity from what happened previous years and just having the same mechanism. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And our roles and responsibilities are laid down in legislation. Councillor Crode.
Thank you, Chairman. When I was chairing this panel, I issued an open invitation to the Chief Constable to come along. Sean Sawyer used to come along, mainly at budget meetings, and as the Commissioner's already said, I'm sure that you will ask the Commissioner to ask the acting Chief Constable to come along at the next budget meeting. And that's all basically that Sean Sawyer used to do, was to come along to the budget meetings. So it would be interesting to have him here, but I don't see why he should spend 4 hours of his time and more with travel as well to sit in on this panel, except for specific questions. And as Ross has already said, I mean, we're not here to scrutinise the Chief Constable, we're here to scrutinise the Commissioner.
Well, I think the Commissioner's already put it on record that the budget meeting is probably an appropriate middle ground here. So yeah, we'll liaise with on that. So thank you, Commissioner. Are there any other points? No. Okay, thank you. I will propose from the Chair that we note the report, seconded by the Vice Chair. All in favour? Thank you. Moving on, complaints against the Commissioner. I'll hand over to Felicity for this point. Again, it's all laid out in your packs. Page 77 to page 78. Felicity.
Thank you, Chair. As you'll see, there have been no recent complaints made, so I have no further comments to make to the panel, but we're open to questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Roger.
Well, not on this particular subject, but I'd just like to ask the panel if we could give our best wishes to the Chief Executive, who I understand is recuperating from cancer or similar. So I'm just wondering whether we couldn't put on record our best wishes for her speedy recovery.
Thank you, Roger, and I'm sure those comments are reflected on behalf of all the panel. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing her again in the new year, I believe. So thank you.
Chairman, she may even be at budget meeting along with the Chief Constable, so you'll have both.
Thank you. So no more comments for item 10. Item 11, work programme. Is there any input or ideas? Councillor Penberthy?
Chair, I think there's a couple of bits. One, picking up earlier from the meeting, the whole issue of young people engagement, but also young people as victims of crime, where that is patterned across the region and what sort of crimes would be really helpful to look at, and how we engage young people in producing solutions as well as looking at their victim patterns would be useful. The second one is really quite often we keep on talking to the Police and Crime Commissioner about things she agrees with us about that need operational engagement that we then talk about at the subsequent meetings. I think it might be useful for us to explore how we therefore get the police to do, as the Police and Crime Commissioner and the Police and Crime Panel are both requesting them to do. And I'm not quite sure what the solution to that is if we're not going to have police present at the meeting, but I think we need to find ways to strengthen the messaging from the Police and Crime Commissioner backed by us, as we have on performance, on hate crime, on lots of other things, when we keep on coming back to the same things over and over again, because it appears the messages of neither the Commissioner nor the panel are being operationalised. And I think that's frustrating for everyone. It might be useful for us to explore how we make sure that the requests that are coming through from the governance bits are operationalised. So it's a bit vaguer. I'm not saying the Chief Constable should be here, though I can understand why that would be a way for the Chief Constable to hear quite often the anger in this room about the lack of operational activity. But I think we do need to find a way for these key bits to be operationalised when they're asked for by both the Commissioner and the panel. And I'm not sure what the answer to that is, but I think it might be worth us thinking it through a bit and having some discussion about something that was suitable for both us and the Commissioner in terms of making that happen, because we waste too much time getting angry about things that we all agree about.
Chairman, I may be able to help there. I wonder if the budget meeting with the Chief Constable is to come up with some very pointed questions that you might want to check and triangulate with the Chief Constable while he's in the room. That might be one way of doing that.
Yes, thank you. I mean, yeah, we are in danger of going a little bit around in a circle in what this panel is mandated to look at. So I'm gauging the frustration, but I appreciate your efforts to try and find a way
I
through
wasn't
that.
suggesting, but I think quite often it is actually some frustration between budget meetings. You know, every meeting so far this year, we've been frustrated about some of the very same things, and you've been as frustrated as we have been. And I think those are the points where we have shared agendas as a panel and Commissioner that the police need to hear effectively from what would have been an old police authority, from every single local authority in their patch. You know, you're not getting it right. Now they could hear from authorities and the Commissioner on those bits. I think it's how we do those bits that are shared. So I am trying to find a way through, but I'm just conscious we have spent a lot of time being very angsty about things we all agree on. So I think we can try it on the budget, but others of them are ongoing, and I'd hate to think that next municipal year we spend meetings continually pushing at the same button time and time again and not getting operational activity coming back to solve the problems and help us to deal with new things rather than continually going around the cycle of old things.
Yeah, I mean, at the next meeting with the chair and the vice chair and the team will try and stitch all this together. I mean, it is a difficult circle to square, to find a better phrase, but I understand the frustration.
Chairman, I think some of the frustrations are the absence of a substantive chief constable on both of our parts in relation to some of that. The holding to account is more tricky with an acting chief constable than the chief constable, and that I think that's where the tension is lying. So yeah, I haven't got an answer for that at the minute though. So.
Okay, thank you. And any other points for the work programme? No? Okay, well, I think that concludes our business. I would just like to thank Pierre over there, who's off to pass his new, and this is his last meeting with us. So thank you, Pierre, on behalf of the panel for all your work behind the scenes. Thank you. And I hope to our guests, our members of the public today, well, as a scrutiny panel, we're here to provide light, more light than heat, and I hope we've managed to do that today. So thank you very much for your attendance, everybody. Thank you.